Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant, where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch in the WWE Network. As the month of January comes to a close, we wrap up my Royal Rumble reviews with my thoughts on the 2011 installment, my favorite Royal Rumble pay-per-view that I have ever seen. I mean, I love some of the other pay-per-views that have had a lot of fun this month, watching back the 96, 2000, 01, 02, 04, 05, 07, 08, 2010 and 2011, watching them all back over the course of the month of January, watching them back on the WWE Network, some of them for the first time, and it still remains to this day, the 2011 installment remains my favorite Royal Rumble pay-per-view. For the entire card on the whole, I love the 2011 match itself, the 2011 Rumble match. I thought it was stellar. We'll break it down right now. Kicking it off for the World Heavyweight Championship match with Edge defending against Dolph Ziggler. Now, if Edge had used his spear, he would have been stripped of the World Heavyweight title. He would have lost the match and the championship. So I loved everything about this matchup, and I think Dolph Ziggler himself had said in a book a couple of years ago, they put out a book that said my favorite matches. I think it came out in either 2012 or 2013. And in that book, Dolph Ziggler said that his favorite match at that time had been with Edge. And I don't know if that had changed or not. Maybe it's changed in the last couple of years. Probably not. I mean, he hasn't had many. I mean, he had a lot of great matches in the last couple of years. A ladder match at TLC, the match with John Cena at TLC 2012. The match that he had with Luke Harper and the match with John Cena, both coincidentally at the TLC pay-per-view. But I think this remains, to this day, one of my favorite Dolph Ziggler matches for the strong showing that he had in this matchup, the history these two had, not on screen, but Ziggler said himself in that book, if you want to go back and check it out, in that these two were road buddies for the longest time. Edge was kind of a mentor to Dolph Ziggler when he was over on the SmackDown brand. So for them to finally, clash in the middle of the ring for the World Heavyweight Championship of all things, it was really, surreal for Dolph Ziggler, and, unsurprisingly so. The match was great from start to finish. Got 20 minutes, even longer than the WWE title match, not by much, but still that was really saying something for the match to kick off the show. And this show was all about the world title matches and the Royal Rumble matchup, which went just over an hour, despite it having 40 people. I think maybe the time intervals were different than normal. But there was also a Divas title match in there as well. But there wasn't much undercard matches. We had the two world title matches, that one brief Divas title match, and then the Royal Rumble match. And there was still time left. There was still time left over. I think it ended at I think it clocked in around 2 hours and 40 minutes, so there was still a lot of time left over. But still, going back to what I was saying before, the World Heavyweight title match to kick off the show, I thought was excellent and one of the best matches. And I think one of the more underrated matches of 2011. You think back on 2011, all the amazing matches between Randy Orton and Christian, CM Punk and John Cena, CM Punk and Alberto Del Rio, Triple H and The Undertaker. And although this one happened early on in the year, in January at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, kicked off the show on a very, very high note. People were buying into the near falls that Dolph Ziggler was getting on Edge when he hit the zigzag, and Vicky Guerrero got involved. I thought it was great all the way around. It was good early on, not relying on too many rest holds, but still a lot of good in-ring action, getting down the stretch with a lot of the near falls, like I mentioned before. And in the end, Edge, even though he hit the spear on Dolph Ziggler when the referee and Vicky Guerrero weren't looking, he also capitalized once the referee was looking with a kill switch, which I thought was really cool. A nice nod to his buddy Christian, who was out with an injury at that point in time, who would actually return the following month at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view to save Edge from an attack from the Royal Rumble winner Alberto Del Rio. One of my favorite moments from that year, in that when Christian came back, Christian Cage, Booker T on commentary. I still laugh at that to this day. But, that was a nice little nod to his buddy Christian. A nice, unique way of ending the matchup without utilizing the spear when the referee was looking anyway. So, awesome matchup all around. Really, really great that it got as much time as it did. A very strong showing for Dolph Ziggler in defeat, and a great title defense for Edge. So 2 thumbs up all the way around. This was only the first matchup. Up next for the WWE Championship, The Miz defending against Randy Orton. Now this was a rematch from the night after Survivor Series when The Miz cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase. A rematch from the TLC pay-per-view when Miz won that tables match. So a pretty lengthy feud between these two. Personally, at that time, I was hoping that John Morrison would get the title shot at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. Although those two did have a kick-ass match, Miz and Morrison, in the first Raw of 2011, in the first match of 2011, which I thought was great. Falls count anywhere for the WWE title. I thought that was a great match. But this was also a pretty good match, too. Also got a lot of time. Early on, it really wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Like I said before, we had seen these two work together so much before that it really wasn't anything new. But it was a pretty good match. I mean, both Miz and Orton had a good showing here. And down the stretch, before Orton could capitalize and win the WWE title, he would be screwed out of that championship after the new Nexus came down to ringside. Now, at the time, it seemed really, really random, but of course, later they would explain that CM Punk's led new Nexus had a beef with Randy Orton dating back to 2008, of all things, 2.5 years before this, when Randy Orton had taken out CM Punk in the Unforgiven 2008 pay-per-view, and he had taken him out of the World Heavyweight Championship match, thus forcing him to vacate the World Heavyweight title, and he was deemed unable to defend that championship on that night. So CM Punk had held a grudge. Obviously, creative was kind of stretching for a reason for that match to happen. But still, I mean, being like the historian of WWE that I am, I appreciated that they brought that up. I thought that was cool. But on this pay-per-view, though, it seemed pretty cool. And a nice way to kind of lead in and plant the seeds for that Royal Rumble matchup between Randy Orton and CM Punk at WrestleMania. Not Royal Rumble matchup, I'm sorry. The WrestleMania matchup at WrestleMania 27 between Randy Orton and CM Punk. So, really good match between Miz and Orton. If I had to take a pick, of all the matches that they had in late 2010 and early 2011, I thought this was their best one. Great showing from both guys. Miz comes out victorious, and at one point in the matchup, which I thought was amazing, a great spot, when the new Nexus initially came down to ringside and they were about to distract the referee and Randy Orton, whoever, when the new Nexus was distracting the referee at ringside, Alex Riley, who was the Miz's protege at that time, of course, comes up from behind Randy Orton. Randy Orton sees it coming, tosses Alex Riley over the top rope, launches him into the new Nexus at ringside. It was a great spot, and Alex Riley got so much airtime from that. It was an awesome visual. And of course, CM Punk would come in from behind, hit the go to sleep, and allow Miz to pick up the scraps and retain the WWE title. So another very, very good matchup for Miz and Randy Orton. Up next, that filler match that I was talking about before, the Divas Championship matchup. Originally, it was supposed to be a 2-1 handicap match with Layla and Michelle McCool invoking their rematch clause for the Divas Championship against Natalya. Thankfully, they changed it up because we saw that same exact match at the Survivor Series pay-per-view only 2 months before this. So thankfully, they switched it up, made it the Fatal 4-Way matchup, also involving Eve, which was pretty random. I mean, when they announced that, when Michael Cole, or the anonymous Raw general manager, whatever, was saying that the pay-per-view or the match would be changed to a Fatal 4-Way, and it's also going to include this diva, people came out of their seat. They probably thought it was going to be Awesome Kong, as did I. I mean, Awesome Kong, aka, who would later become known as Karma in WWE, after she debuted a few months later, had just signed with WWE the month prior in late 2010, in December of 2010. So I was hoping for her to be involved in this matchup. Of course, it was Eve instead. I have no idea what the purpose of that was. I mean, from a storyline standpoint, it didn't even make any sense. One, Eve didn't deserve a title match. I mean, I love Eve. I didn't really mind the title change. It made, it added to the show, I guess, and no one really cared about the matchup. It was right after the WWE title match and right before the Rumble, so they had to kill time somehow. But for one thing, Eve didn't deserve the title match from a storyline standpoint. Two, it wouldn't even really lead to anything. I thought Natalya's title win at Survivor Series the prior year was great, and I thought they were building Natalya versus Beth Phoenix at WrestleMania. And they had the blow-off rematch between Eve and Natalya on an episode of Raw, and Eve won. And she wasn't even at WrestleMania Eve. I mean, in a match anyway. So I don't understand what the point of putting the championship on Eve was. I don't know what they had against Natalya. And of course, the main focus of this matchup was the teasing tension between Layla and Michelle McCool. They wouldn't tease any dissension here, but they would almost have to come to blows during the Fatal 4-Way, because of course it's every person for themselves, and before they could do that, they were interrupted by Eve or Natalya, whoever it was, and Eve came out victorious, the new Divas champion. I mean, a nice little generous pop, but aside from that, people didn't really care. I mean, like I said, she, from a storyline standpoint, didn't even really make any sense, and it's not like she would feud with the Late Cool. She wasn't at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, she wasn't at Extreme Rules, she wasn't at WrestleMania, so it's kind of it was kind of a waste, but like I said, it served its purpose in being a nice filler match on the show. So, of course, we would get to the Royal Rumble matchup, the only Royal Rumble in history that would feature 40 participants and not the usual 30. And, some people, I mean, it's very hit or miss with a lot of people. I was really hoping they would bring back the 40-man concept. I mean, obviously, they just did it for more pay-per-view buys. And from what I understand, the pay-per-view buys on this show actually went up from the previous year. Not by much, only by a smidge. but probably not enough to, make it mandatory to make it 40 men every year. And they don't have to do it every year. They can do it every other year or every few years. It's been 4 years since they brought it back. There was a rumor they would do it in 2015. This year they didn't. They went back to 30, unfortunately, but I thought this was a really good Rumble. Some people say it was too long. It was only an hour and 9 minutes, but I can see why people would say it dragged on or whatever else. But it also, with more participants, it gave you the opportunity to tell more stories. And I know there's also the chance that with 40 people, you'll get more filler people and whatever else. But coincidentally enough, this Rumble had 40 people and it had more stars than the 2012 Rumble the following year that only had 30. If you go back and watch the 2012 Rumble, I remember watching it live. I haven't gone back and watched it since. It was not my favorite Rumble. It's probably one of my least favorite. And that, not the the pay-per-view on the whole, but at least the Rumble match. The Rumble match itself had so many random lower card talent and not enough main event stars. John Cena wasn't in that year. Kane wasn't in that year, who was the Royal Rumble MVP, and it broke his record of being in consecutive Royal Rumbles, which sucked that they broke that streak. But the Rumble itself, it had like Jimmy and Jey Uso. It had like Alex Riley in it, who I love, but still kind of a waste of a participant. And there was just so much randomness in that Royal Rumble for whatever reason. I don't know why. We had a nice few surprises that year. We had Road Dogg, we had Karma, we had, I think, Ricardo Rodriguez make an appearance. There was some nice surprises, but they only, like, David Otunga was number 27. Fucking Big Show, who was in a world title match earlier that night, came out and was in the match. Dolph Ziggler, who I love, but he was already in the title match that same night, and he was in that match. It was really, really random, and I don't understand why they did that. Granted, Orton and Ziggler were in this Rumble, in the 2011 Rumble, but like I said, they had 40 people. They probably had to kill some spots, so they brought them at the very end. But, like I was saying before, though, it was, I don't know, the 2012 Rumble paled in comparison to this one. I thought this was one of the better Rumbles in recent memory. For 40 people, they really made the most of it, with a lot of great stories, too. The big story that they were telling in this Rumble, and I'll start off with this. Kicking off the Rumble was CM Punk, and then before the number 2 enter came out came the Core, and of course the Core was SmackDown's version of the new Nexus, kind of like a watered-down Nexus, and the new Nexus was already watered down as it was, so it was kind of like a watered-down new Nexus. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But, they were teasing tension between those two groups, and it looked like they were in a collision course for WrestleMania. It was heavily rumored at the time, and it led nowhere. The Core would eventually disband. They would lose at WrestleMania in a fucking minute, which really pissed me off. And the new Nexus would get disbanded going into WrestleMania. Member after member after member would be punted in the head by Randy Orton. So the new Nexus eventually met its demise, and the Core was a complete waste of time, and that was a botch from the beginning. But, they teased out at the beginning of this matchup, but like I said, it really led nowhere anyway. Maybe it's because they were kind of stemming off the prior Monday's episode of Raw when they were in the same ring together and whatever else. But maybe that's why. But aside from that, that was a really weird way of kicking off the show. But the number 1 and number 2 entrant I thought were great. CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. Of course, a lot of history there. At this point in time, this was before their big rivalry in WWE the following year over the WWE Championship. But, dating back to the Ring of Honor roots, of course, I didn't really notice that at the time. But, watching it back every year, I realized that in the history these two had, and I think it's great. So, an awesome number 1 and 2 kicking off the Rumble. Daniel Bryan would last a while. CM Punk would last almost half of the matchup before John Cena came in and completely wiped out the entire new Nexus. And that was one of the bigger stories of this Rumble, the dominance of the new Nexus. At points it became a little, they dragged it on a little bit. But like I said before, you gotta have to do that with 40 participants. And it really, I understood the story they were trying to tell. They were trying to assert their dominance. And the new Nexus at this point in time was still a force to be reckoned with, so I can see why they did it. But thankfully, they didn't do it, for 1 or 2 participants, then blow it off. They did it for maybe 5 or 6, and they didn't go too long where it became to the point of, annoying. But it was a nice strategy. We hadn't seen much of that in the Royal Rumble before, with, 4 or 5 guys, 4 or 5 guys grouping up on one participant, everyone that comes in. And, of course, John Cena had to be the one to wipe everyone out, but it was what it was. And I thought it was a really cool way for the new Nexus to kind of made out to look strong in this Rumble matchup. But John Cena would have a pretty strong showing in this contest before being thrown out by The Miz, which was pretty comical if you go back and watch it. Because I don't know if the original plan was for Miz to distract John Cena. I think they ended up reversing it, because I think Miz came out, when Alex Riley came out in the Rumble, in like the late 30s. I think he came out at number 35. And The Miz came out with him, and he went over to commentary. And The Miz was silent at some point for like a lengthy period of time because at one point in the matchup, John Cena and Kofi Kingston were teaming up on Alex Riley in the corner, and they accidentally eliminated him. And I guess what the original plan was for The Miz to distract John Cena, and Alex Riley would eliminate John Cena. And that didn't ultimately happen because Alex Riley got eliminated. So they improvised on the spot, and they had Miz come in. And they had Alex Riley come up to ringside, John Cena knock him off, and then Miz, when the referees weren't looking, tossed over John Cena. So they made up for it nicely. I mean, they improvised and they made the most of it, and you would never know that there was a botch. But I just thought that was pretty funny. You look back and you can see in the corner of the screen Alex Riley get eliminated, and you see the facial reactions of John Cena and Kofi Kingston, and they're like, oh shit, we just fucked up. It was so funny if you go back and watch it. I think it's in like the latter half of the matchup. But that was really funny, and of course we would get two surprise returns from Booker T and Kevin Nash, or aka Diesel. And these were two of the better Royal Rumble returns I've ever seen. Maybe it's just personal bias, because like I said, I love this Rumble show on the whole, and the Rumble match itself. But I thought the two surprise returns from Booker T and Kevin Nash, even though people knew it was coming, like I said, they were, I think it was hinted at, it was rumored online like the night before that they were in the area, Booker T and Kevin Nash are going to be in the Rumble. Like, people knew about it beforehand, but still, when Booker T's music hit, man, like, I was marking it like crazy. I don't know if I was marking out as much as my Matt Striker, probably, but Matt Striker's reaction was priceless. The infamous, it's a mark out moment, I'm marking out, bro, which would eventually would lead to the demise of Matt Striker on commentary. But we wouldn't see him back on commentary on SmackDown. After that point, Booker T would actually replace him, ironically enough. But what a moment. People in the TD Garden in Boston that night came unglued for Booker T. And as well as Diesel, too. I mean, Diesel hadn't been in WWE for nearly... This is 2011. He hadn't been in WWE since 03 or 04, I think. And then Booker T hadn't been in WWE since 07. So I'm really made for two really awesome moments. And it fucked up TNA's plans to reunite the Main Event Mafia over in TNA that year. They were actually planning to do it. And they brought back Scott Steiner and everything. And then Booker T and Kevin Nash went on over to WWE to compete in the Rumble, which I thought was hilarious. But, yeah, amazing moments. Both were short-lived, but it was still really cool to see Booker T and Diesel get their time in the sun, their time to shine in this matchup, and getting a great reaction from the Boston crowd. So that was really, really awesome. So John Morrison also having an awesome save earlier on in the matchup when he was knocked over to ringside. And before Kofi Kingston had his, dives and on the announce table and on the barricade and jumping on chairs and whatever else and doing the handstands, we had John Morrison who leapt over to the barricade and just attached to it like Spider-Man, like they said on commentary. He would walk on the barricade, jump back onto the ring steps and back into the ring. Got a very good pop for that. Got a great pop for that. And I thought that was a pretty sweet moment. Like I said, that would set the stage for Kofi Kingston's acrobatic maneuvers in the subsequent years. And I thought that was great. And he doesn't get enough credit for that because, like I said, it gets overshadowed by all the stuff that Kofi Kingston does every year. But the stuff that John Morrison did in that Rumble, I thought was really, really good. And he had a good showing before he was ultimately taken out by the new Nexus. And I think that was mostly it for all the stories they told in the Rumble. It ended up coming down to Randy Orton, Wade Barrett, and Del Rio. Orton was trying to take out Barrett, and then Del Rio would take out both Orton and Barrett. He would eventually win the matchup. They would ring the bell. People were celebrating. And then Santino, who had come in at number 37, was taken out to ringside, and you would never know that he was gone. I completely forgot that he was in the matchup. And he comes back in, setting up the Cobra and everything, and the referee's like, no, there's still one guy left. The match isn't over. And Santino, after Del Rio turns around, hits the Cobra on Del Rio. The place goes crazy. Santino celebrating like a madman, picks up Del Rio, is about to toss him out with a huge upset victory, and Del Rio reverses it, ends up winning the matchup, and it made for an awesome moment. I think Del Rio wasn't really one that you knew was going to win the Rumble. Like, going in, I really had no idea. I thought there was a chance that John Cena could win, seeing how, it was in Boston. He went on to WrestleMania anyway. He went on to main event over Del Rio. Del Rio was in the opening match. That was kind of fucked up. But Cena went on to main event at WrestleMania anyway for the WWE Championship, so there was a huge chance that he could win a second Rumble. And he would 2 years later, unfortunately. But still, the point still stands that I thought John Cena, could win this matchup. Or Randy Orton, who was trying to get back into title contention, or Wade Barrett, who I thought was the favorite that year. There were a lot of different possibilities who could walk out of this Rumble victorious, and I thought Del Rio was kind of not really the underdog. He wasn't one of my top choices to win as far as who I thought would win. I thought it was a little too soon for him to win at the time, but he would make the most of that push that he got earlier on the year with the feud with Edge, and it was a great push for him. I don't think it came too soon. At the time I did, but in retrospect, he was probably ready for that Rumble win. They would eventually fuck him up later on in the year, and I've talked about this in my reviews in Night of Champions and Hell in a Cell and whatever else, in that they would screw up his push in having him, being fed to John Cena and all that other stuff that they did that year. And still, I thought the Rumble win for Del Rio was great, made for a great moment. It would eventually build to his big moment later on in the year when he won the WWE Championship at SummerSlam. He wouldn't win the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania, but would have a great match against Edge in the opening slot. But that closed out the 2011 Royal Rumble match. I thought this was a great Rumble match. A lot of people said, it was filler, it's too long, whatever. And that's fine. That's totally understandable. If you didn't like this Rumble, I don't blame you at all. I thought it was great. A lot of good stories told. I just remember being glued to my seat the entire time. There wasn't any downtime for the most part. A lot of awesome stories told with the new Nexus, the core at some points, and even Hornswoggle got a little nice showing. He was in there for about 10 minutes. Took out Tyson Kidd and Heath Slater. Nice showing there for him. And Kofi Kingston as well. He was in there for a very long time before being taken out by Randy Orton. But still, Kofi Kingston had a great showing here. The stuff with CM Punk and John Cena, who were both feuding at that time. There's surprise returns from Booker T and Kevin Nash. I thought it was a great Rumble in the whole. It really flew by. You would never know that it was 40 people. So I'm hoping they bring back the 40-man Rumble at some point. I mean, I think the roster depth right now demands it with so many top stars in the roster right now, like up-and-coming guys, and the surprise returns, and the NXT superstars, and the NXT rookies. They could really use 40 men, and as opposed to, because they'll probably waste some spots in like fucking Fandango this year. They need more spots for all their, surprise returns, and like I said, all the talent they currently have in the roster and all the guys down in NXT. So I think that would benefit everybody involved. But that's just my personal opinion. So on the whole, I thought this was an awesome show. Kind of like I said before, it kind of gets overshadowed by all the other stuff that went down that year. The terrible WrestleMania, the very disappointing WrestleMania, the awesome Money in the Bank pay-per-view, the awesome Survivor Series, the awesome TLC, the awesome SummerSlam. Like, a lot of amazing stuff went down in the second half of 2011, and I think this pay-per-view doesn't get the credit it deserves more often than not. But everything about the show I really, really liked. I mean, I think the World Heavyweight Championship match stole the show. I thought that was great, a great showing for Dolph Ziggler. The WWE title match was solid, a good showing for Miz and Randy Orton, also kicking off the Mania feud between CM Punk and Randy Orton. The Divas title match was what it was, nice title change for Eve. I mean, I didn't really care for it, but, it was what it was as filler. It served its purpose in that respect. And I thought the Rumble, like I said before, I thought it was great, and a great winner, too. The last time I was actually really satisfied with the Rumble winner. I didn't really care too much for Sheamus winning in 2012. I respected why they did it. It was a nice, fresh face. But, still at that point in time, I didn't really care for it. And I think Del Rio has been the last, before 2015, of course. And I'm recording this before the 2015 Royal Rumble, so I don't know who won yet. Of course, this is going up on the Tuesday after. But Del Rio, before 2015, was the last guy to have not been a world champion when he won the Rumble. Because, of course, all Sheamus, Cena, and Batista all did. So that made for an awesome moment as well, kind of, cementing Del Rio's destiny as a top star. So, really great show on the whole. Really would recommend it that you go back and watch it, even though the Royal Rumble pay-per-view this year has, come and gone. I would recommend that you go back and watch this pay-per-view on the WWE Network. I'd give it 2 thumbs up. So, that wraps up my Royal Rumble reviews for the month of January right here on YouTube. Had a lot of fun, like I said before, watching back all these pay-per-views, including the 96 shows, 2000, 01, 02, 04, 05, 07, 08, in 2010 and 2011. So I thought it was, a great month on the whole, reviewing all these Royal Rumbles. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And as I've talked about in the past here on the channel and past WrestleRant videos, for the next 2 months, right here on the YouTube channel, right here on WrestleRant, I will be doing the unprecedented. I will be watching and reviewing every WrestleMania after watching it on the WWE Network, right here on YouTube. It's going to be huge. And the first one kicks off this Saturday, January 31st, right here on the channel, where I talk about WrestleMania 1. And I'll be talking about, like I said, every WrestleMania, with the exception of 17, 20, 21, or what, no, 17, 19, 20, 21. And it's not because I'm skipping them. It's only because I reviewed those WrestleManias last year and I only watched them a year ago, so I don't really want to watch them and flash review them again. If you want to see those reviews, they're already up here in the channel. Go back and check them out from last spring. Aside from that, though, every other WrestleMania that I haven't already reviewed here on the channel will be reviewed in the next 2 months right here on WrestleRant. So it's going to be huge. Hope you guys look forward to that. But in the meantime, in the between time, make sure to follow me on Twitter at WrestleRant, on Facebook, Grant Jason Matthews. Bleacher Report, same thing. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. Thanks for listening, folks, and I'll catch you guys on Saturday.